Okay, part 12. So he says, I'm struggling with my mental health. This is, I believe he was, but not for the reasons that he was pretending. I believe he was struggling with his mental health because he realized that we had come to a place, I certainly had, where there were going to be no more lies, excuses, breadcrumbing. He was going to actually have to be responsible for his actions, his behavior. We're now in marriage therapy. These are things that he never would have done or, been accountable for if he hadn't. So I think he's scrambling. I believe he's scrambling because he doesn't want any of this. He has no idea how, he thought he would continue for the rest of our lives, continuing to lie, continuing to manipulate. And I would just, he's been able to work it out for all this time, right? That was never going to change. That's what I believe. So I bring up to our marriage counselor and my own therapist that I'm really worried about this because my husband has told me that he's suicidal. But every time I ask him, I'm constantly checking in. He is blowing me off. I'm not going to talk to you about that. I'm not going to speak about my mental health. He wanted to say, I'm struggling with my mental health and I'm suicidal, and for me to back off. But I'm not going to do that because I'm your wife. So I'm calling people, I'm giving him resources. And I remember my mom saying, Rachel, I love him to death, but it's always been about him. With what you have going on, this time needs to be about you. So give him the resources, which I did, but you need to focus on yourself. But my whole identity is wrapped up in my family and my marriage. Who would I be if I allowed my husband to struggle? And this is someone who, I'm also, which I would take it seriously regardless, but I'm really taking it seriously because my husband is not the type of person, even to me, who would admit if he was having a bad day. We never, ever speak about Andrew's mental health, ever. So he's opened the door, he's telling me he's struggling, and he's told me that he's suicidal. So I couldn't understand why he was continuously blowing me off. And I had a private conversation with our marriage therapist, and I said, I don't want to anger him further. He seems to just be getting really aggravated when I check in with him. And he said, Rachel, it's okay to make him angrier if you save his life. Because we're all taking this seriously. Except him, evidently. I believe he was just saying it. So my marriage therapist, my individual therapist, is bringing this up constantly, telling me that I am not safe because my husband has a gun. And this is already a huge point of contention in our marriage because my husband, I told him I didn't want a gun in the home, and he did it anyway. My husband, in the month of February, over the span of a week, has pulled this gun on me 3 separate times. I know, believe me, I know. You guys have to understand that by the end of this, I didn't know what or who I was. But he pulled this gun on me. And I remember my girlfriend, Micah, said, Rachel, don't say a word to him about anything moving forward. He pulled a gun on you. Your marriage is over. And she was right. I just didn't want to believe it. I didn't want to believe anything. And he won't, and he's not being honest. So she was absolutely right. There's no way that you could possibly give a shit about your spouse and pull a gun on them once, twice, 3 times. No. So I also thought that it wouldn't be possible for my husband to obtain a gun because he's a felon. But apparently in Oregon, they only run statewide background checks instead of national background checks because my husband is a felon in another state. And so he was able to obtain a gun license and a gun, bring it into our home. That was a huge point of contention. And not only has he pulled it on me now in arguments, but now he's saying that he's suicidal. I bring it up in marriage therapy. I only said it once, and he was dismissing it. So the second weekend in March, we have to go for kid number one's, we have to get his tuxedo for senior prom. And up until this point, I'd invited him for several things, and he blew me off. Senior photos, putting together invitations for graduation, all of those things. He blew me off because he would be anywhere else doing anything else except for what was happening in our home. I asked him several times. He says, well, does he want me there? And I'm like, yeah, obviously he wants you there. So he shows up, and the whole time we're there, I can feel the negativity radiating off of him. And this is the only time this has ever happened. So I'm like, he's definitely struggling with his mental health. I can feel all of this negativity, like it's in the room with us, right? So, I'm going to individual therapy. Obviously a lot of this is talking about my marriage, but because that's what's going on in my life at the moment. But I'm also finding some things out about myself in the process. And I'm also finding out about the cycle of abuse. So I'm learning a little bit. Up until this point, my husband has used the bad behavior of other men to excuse his own behavior, if that makes sense. So I'm finding things out slowly. It's slowly. I've also stated that I have pulled back, right? I'm noticing that if I don't engage, my husband does not engage. Any chance that my husband gets to be gone, my husband is gone. So that's how all of March, we're just kind of in it. April is prom for kid number one. And this big moment happens where there have been a few along the way. This big moment happens where kid number one gets accepted into college. And Andrew had no part of this process. He comes home and he's really excited, and he says, I said, do you want to call your dad? And he said, no, I want to tell him when he gets here. And I'm really nervous about that because I know how he's been acting. I know what he has said to me. And these boys are not aware. I mean, I'm sure they can tell a difference, but they don't know the specifics about what is going on. They know that we're in marriage therapy. That's about it. So I'll never forget this day as long as I live. He comes in, and kid number one says, Dad, I've been accepted into college. And he's like so excited. This man looks at him, I don't even know if I can do it, as unenthusiastic as you could possibly be, and says, congratulations. I watch my son deflate in front of me. I send him upstairs and I say, what the fuck was that? And he looked at me deadpan and said, what do you want me to do, Rachel? He looks at me deadpan and says,